Hello everyone, today I'll be giving an introduction to some different types of antibiotics. So what are antibiotics, first of all? They are substances that inhibit growth or kills bacteria, and they are designed to target infections in specific areas of the bacterial cell, mostly the cell wall, but the types can differ based on what type of antibiotic is prescribed. So why don't antibiotics work on viral infections? This is a large misconception because most people think if you were given an antibiotic to feel better for bacteria, why won't it work for viruses? However, bacteria and viruses have a large structural difference. Antibiotics primarily attack the cell wall of a bacterial cell, as I mentioned earlier. However, viral cells do not have a cell wall. Instead, they have a protein coat. So if you were to prescribe someone with a viral infection antibiotics, the antibiotics would try to attack a cell wall that just wouldn't be there, rendering them useless. Bacteria also tend to attack from the outside of your body, whereas viruses move in and they continue making copies. The viruses also do not reproduce. They instead reprogram healthy cells to create new viral cells. So if you were to send in an antibiotic, it would think that the virus is just a healthy cell, so they reprogrammed it. Therefore, if an individual is sick with the virus, taking antibiotics would make no impact whatsoever. So now let's move on to learning about 4 different types of antibiotics. First type is B-lactam antibiotics. This is also known as penicillin. This is a very common antibiotic as it is very helpful. They work by targeting proteins that catalyze, which basically means end, the synthesis of peptidoglycan that forms the cell wall of bacteria. They work by binding to the BPBs in the cytoplasmic membrane. Our next type is tetracyclines. They work by blocking off an RNA reaction, and by blocking it off, it shuts down a lengthening protein chain. And you could probably guess, but they bind to a single site on the ribosome, so therefore they can shut off the protein chain. Our next type is fluoroquinolones. They hamper with DNA synthesis by inhibiting DNA gyrase. DNA gyrase is an enzyme, and this takes place on the DNA strands, so they can hamper with the DNA synthesis. Pretty easy to remember there. Now, our last type is sulfonamides. They inhibit the growth and multiplication of bacteria. Therefore, if the bacteria can't grow and multiply anymore, eventually it'll come to the end and make the person feel better. And they interfere with the synthesis of folic acid, since that is one of the factors contributing to growth and multiplication. Now it's practice time. Based on the definitions I have provided earlier, I will share a patient history and you will get to decide which antibiotic to prescribe. Now, example 1. The patient has a sharp pain in the chest, as well as chills. They are experiencing a shortness of breath and are coughing violently. The patient appears to have pneumonia. Which antibiotic should you prescribe? I'll give you a minute to think about it, or either go back in the video to look over the definitions. In this scenario, you should prescribe tetracyclines, since the bacteria is mainly hampering with protein production in pneumonia. Note, you can also prescribe penicillin and fluoroquinolones. However, tetracyclines are recommended more commonly within physicians. Example number 2. The patient has pain while swallowing in addition to peeling skin and fever. You notice that their lymph nodes are widely enlarged. The patient appears to have scarlet fever. Which antibiotic should you prescribe? Again, I'll give you a moment to think about it. In this example, you should prescribe B-lactam antibiotics, otherwise known as penicillin, since this will catalyze the peptidoglycan, which forms the cell wall where the bacteria will attack. Example number 3. The patient is experiencing increased phlegm as well as fatigue with a postnasal drip. The patient also has a shortness of breath. So the patient appears to have bronchitis. Which antibiotic should you prescribe? In this scenario, you should have prescribed sulfonamides, as the bacteria is mainly wreaking havoc within the folic acid's production of the cell. Example number 4. The patient has fatigue, sore throat, and trouble breathing. The patient appears to have COVID-19. Which antibiotic should you prescribe? Okay, now this one was a trick question. You should not prescribe an antibiotic for COVID-19 since it's a virus, so prescribing an antibiotic won't make any difference. Okay, here's the last example. You guys got this. The patient appears to have back pain as well as pain urinating. They have also described their urine as cloudy. They've noted a loss in appetite due to nausea as well as a faster heart rate than usual. The patient appears to have a kidney infection. What antibiotic should you prescribe? In this scenario, you should prescribe fluoroquinolones since the bacteria is infecting fast and harshly, so you should try to hamper the DNA synthesis of all these infected cells. Congrats! Now you know more about antibiotics. Hope this video was helpful.